Hello, it's Glenn Tranter. I'm the founder of Glenn Tranter Consulting, and I'm a productivity coach. I'm about to be interviewed by Prosper on the online prosperity show, and I believe Prosper is going to peel a few layers of the onion of Glenn Tranter to understand where I came from, what I went through, and how I got to being a productivity coach.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And I think this episode promises to not just be informative, but downright entertaining. You should have seen us behind the scenes with Glenn as we were getting started on this show. So, I'm your host, Prosper Tarwinga. Today, we've got a guest who's on a mission to save your time and sanity in the corporate world. Now, Glenn, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Prosper, and thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. What else would I have been doing with the next 100 minutes?
The mind boggles, doesn't it?
Fantastic. And for those that are listening right now, you might actually be wondering what we're talking about 100 minutes and things of that nature. Well, get ready to meet the man who's on a mission, like I say, to save your time and sanity. He's the maestro of time management and the savior of overwhelm. He's the one and only Glenn Tanner. Now, Glenn, before we dive into the secrets of maybe your success, tell us about yourself and what it is that you do, especially when it comes to saving people 100 minutes a day, and why that specific number.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's probably a great place to start. My background is working in corporates before I got into productivity. And and when I say that my background is that I was someone who was always taught to work hard. So I was actually born on a 1,200-acre farm. I spent my first 14 years on there. And before I went to primary school, I used to follow my father around as he would work on the farm, and we used to have to feed hay bales to the cattle on the farm, and I was too small as a 5-year-old to be out in the trailer behind the tractor throwing the hay bales out to the cattle. So I got to drive the tractor as a 5-year-old, towing my dad as he's throwing it out. So I've come from this background of always having a work ethic. We've had our chores, like one of my chores was um, putting wood in the wood box. And I was doing that as a 5 and 6-year-old. Um, and we all had things that we had to do. So that was just embedded in me. So when I joined the workforce, that's what I did. Like, I didn't go to university. I was breaking my neck to get out of school. It didn't make much sense to me, school. So I was fortunate enough when I was in my what was called year 11, so my second last year of high school, I was fortunate enough to play in a semi-professional basketball league. And I thought I was going to be a professional basketballer. That's what I wanted to do. And um, I had a severe ankle injury when I was in year 12, my final year of high school, and multiple surgeries later, I ended up only making it to that semi-professional level. So I just wasn't quite good enough. So I had to go and earn a living. So um, I put my head down, my bum up. I did lots of night school. So to improve myself. So what the irony is, whilst I was trying to get out of school at the start, when I saw there was connection to work, I actually went and bettered myself. And the way how I worked was very successful for a number of years. I worked my way through various roles, through various promotions until it all caught up with me in 2006. I actually burnt out. So I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, traveling 2 out of every 3 weeks. I had an international job. I had a young family. I was struggling to get that whole balance right with the work pressures, with being overseas when I wasn't with my family. And as I say, it just got too much. And when I say I burnt out, I didn't work for 15 months. So that's a long story as to sort of how I got here. And I should add, when I didn't work for 15 months, I developed chronic fatigue syndrome. So um, it was the most challenging time of my life. Um, when I came back into the workforce, I decided I wanted to help others. I wanted to help them with the lens of productivity, but not just the lens of productivity, because I'd always got stuff done, but that way in working in which you can get that work-life balance so you can be successful and sustainable at the same time. And personally, I'd made that mistake where I didn't do that for a period of time, and it's fine. You can do that for some weeks and months, even some years. But when it's year on year on year on year, it catches up with you, which is kind of interesting as we've come full circle to the end of 2023. So many corporate workers were talking about how exhausted they are, how they feel burnt out. And that's the space that I work in, is helping people be successful in the roles without feeling exhausted, without wasting time. I've always had a pet hate. I've never liked wasting time. It's one of those things, if you want to get me irritated, waste my time, because it's just been something that's been in or about me. I'm a doer. I like moving forward. And when I'm not, I get frustrated as such. So there's a whole bunch of things that sort of are underneath there, that sort of how I got to where I am today.
Absolutely. What a beautiful story. And I can picture young Glenn, 5-year-old on the tractor, just being thrown over, just going at it, loving it. But I think there was such joy and excitement, no matter how hard yakka the job must have been. It seems like you didn't burn out at the farm.
No, no,
Right.
no.
So would you say now, because you are working in your natural element and natural environment, as opposed to the artificial worlds that we succumb ourselves to, would you say that maybe that would have been the reason why you quite enjoyed, filling up that wood box?
Yeah, I think I've always enjoyed work though. So when I was working corporates, I enjoyed work. What really caught me then was I would only sleep around 3 hours a night. So you cannot burn the candle at both ends. And no, I wasn't out partying with that other time. No, I would really struggle to sleep. So I didn't look after myself, and being an ex-athlete, like I'm somebody up until I was 40, when I would go for a 5 kilometer run, I'd go for a PB. It's just how I'm wired. I was always racing the clock because I got sub 20 minutes as an 18-year-old. That's what I'm aiming for when I'm 40. That's it's just me of how I was. So I had to learn to let go of some things. And what had made me successful had also made me unsuccessful. That was the great irony of everything.
That is a very good realization because so many people just go through life without actually making that sort of realization that the very things that might be making you successful are the things that might actually cause your own demise. But let's just revert back a little bit. I mean, obviously, I like the whole young Glenn on a tractor because I now can't, for the love of it, get the sight off of my head of you just bobbing around in the tractor there. Did you have any aspirations or goals, or was life just, revolving around that hay, that farm, whatever that family was doing at that particular time?
Yeah, so growing up in the country, you played AFL football. That was in the winter. At summertime, you'd play cricket in the backyard, and I never officially played cricket. So, um, my parents came from sporting families. So my dad was quite a good footballer. He was actually an outstanding show jumper. So he was invited to train for the 1956 Olympics and didn't end up going and doing that. I wanted to be like my dad. So I got into horse riding at a young age. When I was 5 years old, I broke in a Shetland pony only for the reason that dad was too heavy to ride it. Not that he was overweight or anything, he was just a strong man. And let's just say that Shetland pony Morgan nearly broke me in. It did so many horrible things to me. It wasn't funny. And you'd be hanging on to this little monkey grip saddle for dear life. And yeah, and that was literally it. So I'd been tossed so many times and kicked and stood on and bitten and you name it. I had it all done to me. But I did join Pony Club and not that the real driver behind that, we used to go to church of a Sunday morning, and my mother was a Sunday school teacher because no one else would do it. So we weren't a really religious family, but we did that. And I think my parents did that so as the children, we got the right grounding behind us. My brother Craig, who's 2 years older, and myself, we schemed as 5 and 7 year olds that if we joined Pony Club that was a Sunday morning, that would get us out of going to church. And that is what we did.
Shifty, shifty, huh? I quite like this farm tales and everything else that comes along with it, and quite still can't get over the picture of 5-year-old Glenn on a tractor, now on a pony, trying to break the pony and everything else that comes along with it. That really, spells a really well grounded foundation with work ethic and responsibility and accountability for the output that you were going to put out, in life. Now, would you say this is what then led you to a successful IT career and actually being recognized as the go-to guru for sustainable workplace practices?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think I'm someone, if it doesn't interest me, then it's hard for it to get my real energy behind something. So if I get involved in something that interests me, then you'll get all of me. I'm all in. So for instance, my wife Sam, I've never beaten her in a set of tennis. So not that we play tennis anymore, like never beaten her. And she's got a tactic of put the ball over the net. My tactic is to go for winners, topspin forehand, topspin backhand stuff. Don't have the ability to do it. But because I'm not very good at it, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. Except once we were on holidays and I was beating her 5-1 and then I choked and lost still. I wasn't too impressed that time. So um but and if something doesn't interest me, it doesn't matter. Like early on when we were going out, we went for a run one day and I'd just had something to eat and she wanted to go for a run. And I thought, well, yeah, I can still beat her. That's all right. So I've gone for this run with her. And early on in the run, I got this stitch. And I mean, it was a really bad stitch. And she got so far away from me, I could not see her. And for the last 2 kilometers, I realized I've really got to push myself to beat her to keep my streak intact here. So I pushed like anything. I nearly had a cardiac arrest on the finish line. I pipped her and I nearly had this cardiac. I was really, really struggling. But that's just how I'm wired as such. If it gets my interest, I'm all in. If it doesn't have my interest, then I don't really care as such.
Absolutely. I quite like that. And congratulations, Sam, for putting Glenn in his place. I mean, obviously, for somebody who's been an achiever since year five, age of five, up until all the way up in your career. See, if you have that sort of a balance and somebody who puts you in check, I think that's a fantastic endeavor. But that doesn't spell what I have sort of discovered about yourself. I mean, obviously, for somebody who's played semi-professional football, you would have had a lot of discipline to follow through. I mean, if it's something that you're passionate about, you would have obviously had that discipline and teamwork to make sure that whatever you touch a basket, it has to net, or you have to pass it on to the team person. Would you say that being exposed to this sort of sports and also this sort of attitude that you have has an influence in your approach to productivity and leadership?
Oh, absolutely. I've been involved in team sports for most of my life. So I played basketball myself for 41 years. I've had 10 surgeries because of basketball along the way. Um, and everything is about the team. So when I played at that semi-professional level, my view is the only way I got to play at that level, I think there were other players who were much, much better than me, was that I outworked everybody. I was fitter than everybody. Um, when I was 23 years old, I was actually told I could never play sport again because of my ankle was in such a mess. I'd had multiple surgeries on it, and I couldn't accept that. And my final surgery got me good enough to be able to play again, and I was able to come back and won a national championship with a team. So I retired at that level when I was 25 years old because I couldn't keep it up with work. Like I'd be working in Sydney and fly back and play a game that night in Melbourne. And I'd had three surgeries on my ankle at the time. So my ankle used to blow up like a balloon when I'd fly on the plane, and I could only run in straight lines that night. So I lost a bit of mobility and things like that, but I still played socially for a large number of years after I retired from semi-professionally because I love basketball, but what I love more, I discovered, I love competing. That's what I really love. If it's go play socially, just walk down the court, I'm not interested. Like I could still do that now if I wanted, but it doesn't interest me whatsoever because I like the competitive nature of challenging yourself. That idea of getting better at what you do and then either maintaining once you reached your top level, but rather than sort of go like that and sort of nosedive and your skills drop and all that sort of stuff. That's not me. That's when I want to hand it over to somebody else and I'll go do something else.
Absolutely. I can so tell the competitive nature in your spirit. And, I would have just maybe also back again, imagining you wrestling with Morgan, the pony, and then just really trying to put him in his place and things of that nature. So this then explains why for you, you actually did overcome burnout because a lot of people do not come back, from the burns unit, and it's just a place where so many people have no recourse. Now, overcoming burnout is no small feat. And hats off to you for, recognizing and, taking control and ownership of yourself. Now, can you maybe take us back to that sort of pivotal moment where you actually realize that, wait a minute, change is actually needed? And how does that now shape your mission today?
I I think I had an anxiety attack at work one day. So I'd never had an anxiety attack before. I've never had one since, but something wasn't right. And I picked up my phone. I walked outside and I called my wife and I said, something's not right here. Um, she'd been noticing signs in me for a period of months and was concerned about me for a period of months. And I just kept on ignoring her because, I would, in my eyes, I was fine. Um, and my ego was certainly wouldn't let me concede that there was anything that I was struggling with as such. So I had the anxiety attack, and next minute I was in speaking to a psychologist who was also a dietitian who was very, very good, and got me to really start understanding some stuff about me. And then there was a whole bunch of tests done and stuff that I had to talk to my work and just said, hey, there's something not right here. So I had some long service leave. So I took my long service leave, um, and was feeling better, and which was great. So we bought a caravan and we decided we would go and take the family halfway around Australia over that period of time. Um, which that was when we really discovered there was something not right with me, because the adrenaline from that trip, I was quite excited about that, and we're up and we're exploring and showing. We had three kids. They were aged would have been um 8, 6, and 2 at the time. Um we and it was on the way back. I couldn't tow the caravan anymore. I was so exhausted. So I remember I towed it through Sydney because Sam, she'd never towed the caravan before, and putting her in a big city like Sydney wasn't great. So we propped myself up. I was able to do that. Got to the other side, or this side of Melbourne side of Sydney, and handed it to her, and she drove the rest of the way home. And that's when we realized, hang on, there's a pattern happening here, that I start sort of feeling a bit better, and then I'm just, the adrenal just takes over and something's not right. So that's when we really had to take a step back and look at how I process things. So um, I got off my vices, and my vices were coffee. So I would have coffee and enough sugar to prop myself up through the day. You'd start for jumbo latte, you'd have one mid-morning, maybe one afternoon. I got off because I was an ex-athlete. I wouldn't drink Coca-Cola. I drink Diet Coke at the time. So I got off that, and I was drinking scotch as well of a night time. That was my favorite. So when I'd come back from traveling overseas, I was buying duty-free 100 proof scotch, and I had 11 liters of it in the house at the time. Um, so since 2006, I haven't had a coffee. Um, I haven't had soft drink, and I no longer drink scotch because I found that the sugar in that was keeping me awake at night as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a whole reinvention of the person, you know. And I quite like how you took a step back, because some people would just keep plowing through up until the pencil is sharpened all the way to the end, and there's nothing else to retrieve from that. Now, this is not something that was just happening to Glenn Tranter, right? It's something that maybe happens to quite a lot of men and women out there, especially in the corporate
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, we only know what we know. So, um, what I'll take a step back. When I didn't work, I realized I needed to get better control of my thoughts. So I got into doing meditation. I'd never done meditation. My style was, if you were injured, you'd strap something up, you'd go back out on a basketball court, you were fine. Um, when I did meditation, it took me 6 months to learn it. And the reason it took 6 months is that I tried so hard to think about nothing that I would sit there tensing up, and it didn't work whatsoever because it was my old processes in doing things. But I was in a couple of different meditation classes, and what I was amazed to find out was that 70 to 80% of the people were in there because I was suffering from either stress, anxiety, or depression because of their jobs. They couldn't cope with their jobs. So the remaining people generally had some form of significant illness that they were there and using meditation for. And that's what inspired me to help others. So um, productivity is, people think about productivity and I think about it as if just working faster. And it's not just working faster. Maybe if you're someone who's not necessarily achieving what you need to achieve at work, then maybe you need it to be able to get more throughput through. But there's also a lot of people who are achieving an awful lot who keep on pushing, and they need productivity to actually slow themselves down, to buy back more time, to be able to get that better work-life balance that I was lacking because I'd been successful, but just keep on pushing, pushing, pushing through. And that's, and we help anyone who's sort of struggling to get the output they need to, right through to people who are considered high achievers, but they're struggling with sustainability.
I like that because, too much of anything is dangerous. Not doing enough
Yes.
is not,
Mm-mm.
adding to the corporate side of things and doing so much without, being cognizant of what that causes. I think that's what actually brings overwhelm. So,
Yeah.
with what you do, I mean, corporate workload overwhelm is it's a very common struggle from most of the people
Mm.
that I speak to and things of that nature. Now, can you maybe dive a little bit deeper into how you help leaders reclaim those precious maybe 100 minutes within just 6 weeks in and of itself? Because like you said, some people are overly working but producing nothing, and some are under working and obviously it's not doing anything for them. So maybe you can let us know what it is that you do in that 6 weeks that helps people gain those 100 minutes per day.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it took me a long time to learn this stuff. That's the first thing that I'll say. It wasn't something I've just gone abracadabra. Here's an option. So I worked for a company for a number of years who was doing had a productivity solution, and it was when they shut down their Melbourne office that I decided to go and go out on my own and do it. But I wanted to put my flavor on it as such. So the first thing that we do is I don't like a cookie cutter approach with anything. I want to get, if I was working with yourself, Prosper, I want to get to know what you're what you're like. What do you do well? What don't you do so well? What do you do naturally? What do you find as a struggle? What's your challenges? What would you like to see? So and I do this via discussions, but also I get you to complete what's called a pre-program diagnostic, where we capture that. Because that way I can tailor my coaching directly to you. Because that's the most important thing. Rather than just going one size fits all, we're all unique. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses. So maybe we've got to either steer clear of some of those weaknesses or strengthen them because it depends what the weaknesses are. And if you're doing something well, then I don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can tick the box and move on to the next most impactful piece. So the first thing that I do, um, I have a I have a program where I work with individuals and I work with teams as well. My first bit, if you think of this as a Venn diagram, it's the cadence. You need to have the cadence of an effective workflow. And that means so you can do things quickly, right, first time. So with the cadence, um, still today, what we find is a lot of people just struggle with their email. They've just the email volume, they don't know how to use it correctly. Um, so we hit your email to give you an effective workflow and a way in which you can just get stuff done. So rather than feeling overwhelmed by the overall volume of mountain of emails that you may have. So some of the executives I work with will get up to 300 emails a day. And no one's getting through 300 emails a day. So we've got to apply various strategies of automation around that, of discarding stuff. But even there can be someone who's only getting 20 emails a day and they can still be struggling because they don't know what to do with their email as such. So we start with that. Um, and then what we do is we'll then start looking at this overall workflow of how you're interacting with things like interruptions, procrastination, distractions. So we're looking at all these things that sort of pop up that break our concentration. And that's in the cadence of an effective workflow. So we're the second module that we work through um, is we want to look at how you plan and prioritize. So, in other words, to be successful in your role, what do you have to do? What is it? And what do you have to do more of? What do you need to do less of? And what we typically find is that because people are so busy, they're reacting to so much stuff. The real stuff that they should be working on, they either don't have time or they're working back late at night on that stuff. And if that's the most important stuff, then that's what should be done first. And people don't have tools to be able to manage that. So I give them some tools to get some real clarity around that. So think about put a massive spotlight on it, and then we're really changing that mindset around because if it becomes a matter of I can't do everything, then what do I need to do? What's going to be most impactful as such? So it's often for people what I find it's just a realignment as to what they really should be doing rather than getting caught up in busyness. And then the last one is I can be working really, really fast. So I can start off, I can be working on have a workflow. I'm working really, really quickly. I'm working on the right stuff, but I've got to work with others as well. So how do I collaborate? So who do I need to collaborate with? In the collaboration, what's getting in the way of stopping that? So how can we get this effective model happening? Um, and for a lot of companies, they've just got way too many meetings. There's a massive, massive meeting overload. So we can slash through a lot of those meetings or go about looking at them, doing them smarter, shorter, other ways of communicating so we free up time so people can be effective at what they do in less time. So, and I come from I've got an awful lot of theory behind me that I've learned this stuff, but I come from a pragmatic sense. So, does it make sense for the individual? And it's not necessarily a matter of saying a one size fits all. It's a matter of saying, hey, Prosper, based on how you work, which one works best for you? How do we get this aligned for you? And what I really love, because it's targeted down at the individual level, is that you're impacting people. And the greatest thing that people say to me, and I have this said a number of times, is um, Glenn, you changed my life. And it's really impactful. The first time someone said that to me, I didn't know they were going to say this. So I was working at a company and um, I'd trained this group and taken them through the program. And they got me to train another group. So I'm in there training another group. I'm going around. We've got some boardroom sessions where we've got the entire group. And then I go individually to their workstations. And one of the ladies um, saw me from the first group and yelled out to me down the corridor, Glenn, I want to see you. And I've gone, oh no, I'm looking, where can I run, duck?
Who is this?
And this doesn't, this doesn't sound good. So I went down and saw her and she closed her office door and I thought, oh, this doesn't seem to be good. And she goes, I just want to thank you. You changed my life. And she told me a story about how her marriage was on the rocks and she would come home so angry and frustrated from work and she would take it out on her husband. And she was no longer stressed and it's changed her relationship. So I didn't do any of that. That's just the ripple effect of what productivity can have and all the power to her. So that was an amazing thing. She closed the door because she didn't want any of her colleagues hearing about it. So, but when you get stories like that, I, a valuable lesson I learned, whenever anyone says they want to talk to you, doesn't matter how terse they are, you never know what it's going to be. So you might as well front up.
Absolutely. I quite like that because how you do anything is how you do everything. All right. If you show
Mm.
up and you're productive and you're managing your time well, if you're doing that in your inbox, you're going to be doing that in the meetings. You're going to be doing that with everything else. And that's also going to translate to how you carve out time for your family, for your
Yeah.
loved ones, and everything else that comes along with it because so many people get caught up in wanting to do, and not even manage to fulfill their role at work and then fulfill their home duties and everything else that comes along with it. And I quite like how you were saying that the tools and the courses that you have are not, a one size fits all. You were talking about how when you were growing up, you would be working at a farm and things of that nature. Some people wouldn't be able to do that. When I was growing up, I was taught something that has completely changed how I see everything in life and things of that nature. I want you to put out your hand like this, Glenn. All right. So I was taught no two fingers on the same hand are of the same height. So no matter what you're going to be doing in life, there's never going to be some sort of sameness. Well, we are
Yep.
the same people and everything else, but we are completely different people, and how we approach life and how we approach things has to be unique and tailor made to that particular individual. So for all those people that are doing long meetings and things of that nature, I think you need to see Glenn. And like he says, he can fix up the inbox as well because so many meetings could have just been an email, which Glenn can help you fix out there. Now, in our world, you would understand, Glenn, time management, productivity, all of those are buzzwords. You know what I mean? It's just things
Mm.
that people throw around, time, whatever it is, and things of that nature. We all have 24 hours. You can't manage time. But your approach seems different. Now, why is it maybe relevant in today, and how do you sort of modernize it for the fast-paced, ever-changing work landscape for somebody who was tossing out bale, hay bales from a tractor, trailer at 5?
Yeah. And I think you touched on a really good point there is that there's a lot of traditional time management principles um, that they're actually still valid today. But the problem is that for many years, what we tried to do is we tried to get someone to fit and adapt to the time management principles rather than the other way around. So adapt the time management principles to the individual based on their various quirks, strengths, weaknesses, and preferences as such. And that's a real key. And how I stumbled into this, it was when I was working for another productivity company and I was in sales at the time. And what I thought I did a great job is in scoping these projects, and I'd hand it over to the consultant who was going to implement, and we'd get a reasonable response, and then we'd get 30% of people, generally nearly every program, who didn't adapt to it. So I'd ask the consultant what happened, and the consultant would just complain and point fingers about the individual because the individual didn't adapt to the principles. And I've gone, well, hang on, one size doesn't fit all. That doesn't make sense to me. So um, I I went at it from another approach. Is you're still trying to get the masses the 70%, but you're trying to have something that's somewhat flexible that you're getting the other 30% as well.
Mm.
And it's generally, it works on the proviso. If someone wants to improve, then we can help them improve. If they want to sit back and cross their arms and not get involved, then no one's going to be able to do anything with those individuals as such. So it what I try and do is I try to connect with the individuals of what's in it for me. I'm
All
trying
right.
to find out what drives them. If it's not getting results, maybe it's going to the gym at night. Maybe it's getting home in time to have dinner with their family. Maybe it's that they want to do some studies. You're connecting to whatever it is you're looking for it. Once you connect with that, then it's all part of being part of a team, which
Mm.
is what I learned in the basketball, where you're running highly fine-tuned offenses where every player has to be in a specific spot. Otherwise, the offense falls over and it won't work as such.
I like the phrase that you brought about, the whole "what's in it for me" setup there, and I'm just probably gonna throw that back at you. I mean, for our viewers, if they are sort of like in the right place and they're thinking, okay, so I've heard all about this, nowhere am I going to learn to drive a tractor. I can't go back to 5 years of age or try and break in a pony, and his name is never going to be called Morgan. What sort of key questions should they be asking themselves to determine if your strategies align with their actual needs?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is just to understand what's frustrating them at the moment. And is it something? So what's getting in the way from making progress? Um, Ultimately about productivity, it's embedding habits. So it's building habits as such. So as part of my programs, I take people through a process to understand what's stopping them or slowing them down, and what do they need to learn? What's the bit that's missing? And what's the impact if they could do something about what would be the impact of that? Who would benefit from it? And what's the cost of doing nothing? So, once they start going through these types of questions, we generally land on something and then we can build off there. So then I think with any coaching, you need to also ask yourself, can you resonate with the individual? So if somebody doesn't like me, they don't like the way I dress, the way I sound, or don't like my tractor story, whatever it is, then they should go and get another coach, because coaching's something that you want to be able to resonate with the individual. So is it someone that, yeah, I can work with them, and I think I can get some value with them or from them, then it's probably worthwhile having a discussion as such.
Mm, absolutely. And I quite like that you give people an opportunity and an option to pick and choose whether you're the right fit for them. Now, my question then is, you've been through your go-throughs, you've been through stuff yourself. Somebody would just be sitting, like you were saying, just you read class, you know what? I'm gonna look after numero uno and not worry about everybody else. What is the most rewarding aspect of actually helping others navigate through whatever challenges that they're going through in order for them to achieve success, because that is very selfless of you.
Yeah, I look at it, I don't succeed unless they succeed. So I'll keep pushing until they succeed. It's just how I'm driven. So sometimes that takes going the extra step. Um, I do like an accountability process, and I'm very, very transparent with people who I coach individually. So I do coaching notes after every session, but the transparency comes with is a copy of those notes goes to the one-up manager as well. So the one-up manager can see that we're not just there for a good time, that we're doing some stuff. And there's no we're not trying to paint anyone in a bad picture. It's just, all right, here's what we did, here's what we're going to do between the next session, between now and the next session, so that we get that implementation. Embedding is so, so important. So we do that, and we do that in a very careful manner, but it's how you start to see change happen as such. And when you make a change in one, and then if you're able to make a change in someone else and someone else, you get the knock-on multiplier effect.
Mm, I think so, because it's like it's just a ripple effect on how it all works out eventually. Now, Glenn, before we wrap up, what would you say would be the biggest takeaway that you want our viewers to sort of remember, and how can they get in touch with you for more insights and maybe get started with you on their productivity journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that one size doesn't fit all. And if it doesn't quite feel right, then it may not be all that right. So some people who say, well, they did a time management course back in 1999 or something like that. And you can tell that they're struggling. You only need to look at, and you hear the complaints from other people around them. Um, if there's been changes to your environment, then sometimes you've got to adapt and change how you work yourself as well. So that's things don't stay in stuck. And as we're going through with artificial intelligence now, we've seen the biggest change to how we work since the internet came on. It is so significant. Um, and we need to make sure we're on top of this because we do run the risk of being left behind. The pace that things are changing now, and you'll find that there's some technology you could be leveraging um, that you're not because if we're shy of it or our principles just don't scale up. We don't have the scalability. So that's where I help people. So to get in contact with me, my website is glenntranter.com. Um, I post regularly on LinkedIn. I've got an upcoming webinar coming up or workshop, so a free workshop that's called Transform Your Workday. Start 2024 with immediate results, less overwhelmed. So in Australia, that is on the February 1. It's a 1 hour workshop, and I've run this one before, and we get rave reviews on it. So if anyone's interested, then sign up. It's limited to 100 people.
Fantastic. Is it okay if we can put your links in the show notes so that people can?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Yes, if you're watching right now, I would definitely put in all those links so that you can get started, on your journey to productivity, so you can make the most of the hours that we have, in life and everything else that we're doing. Now, Glenn, it would be remiss of me to not ask you this question, just putting you back to the time when you were going through your 15-month sabbatical, and just imagine you're driving back with Sam and the kids, 8, 6, and 2. You're driving back to Sydney and you just started getting overwhelmed on, just pulling the rig that you had, or the trailer, and you had to ask Sam to sort of step in and things of that nature. If you would have been the voice on the radio at that particular time, what would you have wanted the Glenn of that time to have heard?
Oh, great question. Um, and it would be not drive whilst you're feeling drowsy, that's for sure, because you're talking about other lives and you're carrying quite a weight. But I think the voice of reason I would have wanted to hear is that sometimes we're blind to our own weaknesses, and we do need to listen to our loved ones because they're generally more insightful than what we sometimes give them credit for as well.
Absolutely. I quite like that. And I mean, obviously, you've already told us about your webinars and everything else that's coming up in the future, but I think you owe us a book or two.
Yes, well, I did write one book. I wrote a book in 2017 called Rapid Response: How IT Executives Deliver Excellence in the Business. And I must admit, it was such hard work. I got up at 5 a.m. to write that book before work every day for a period of time, um, which was great. And I did it on weekends. So when my son was at basketball, I'd be in the car, I'd be writing the book and so on like that. Um, but what I realized was because everyone else wasn't in the 5 a.m. time, I was really starting to struggle with just feeling tired because I was just getting far less sleep. So, but yeah, I've had a number of people suggest to me that I write another book. So maybe.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time and wisdom that you've shared with us on this episode. You see, the people at home won't even see, but I wrote copious amounts of notes. I think I'm a Trenter expert right now, if there's such a thing.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity, Prosper. I really enjoyed myself here today.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. A journey filled with insight, strategy, and a touch of humor, courtesy of the incredible Glenn Tranter. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, and I bet you have, because me and Glenn really, really had a good time creating this. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more wisdom and meeting guests like Glenn. And I think here's a challenge for those that are watching right this moment. First of all, thank you so much. And second, I want you to just rewatch this episode so you can really uncover the hidden gems you might have missed out the first time. There's so much that has been uncovered in this, and that's the reason why I'm encouraging Glenn to actually write a book, because wisdom like this should not just go untouched, right? So thank you once again, Glenn. And until next time, this is Prosper signing off. I want you to stay productive, stay prosperous, and keep chasing those dreams. Bye for now.